Fancy, how are you today? My name is Ben Morasti, and this is Kehte-Hiyak. Our guests today are three elders from Cumberland House, Saskatchewan: Charles Fosseneuve, Ovide Chaboyer, and Lawrence Cook.
My name is Charles Fosseneuve. Cumberland House, I was born here in 1917, and haven't moved too much in my lifetime. I stayed here mostly all my life. Of course, I was in the army. I was overseas for 5 years in World War II. And when I came back, I got stuck here, and that's where I am. I traveled quite a bit north, though. I've been tangled with the education department and Mount Police Church and everything in my lifetime. And I travel all these northern points, like Sturgeon Landing and Beaver Lake and Wollaston, Reindeer Lake, Black Lake, Nelson. I travel all over Nelson River and Radium City. And in the west, I travel all these northern west villages in my lifetime. It's quite experience for me to meet all these nice people. And we always talk about this place. I think it's gradually going down instead of promoting our society in here. I think we had a lot of better place to live than Cumberland House years ago. Everything was plentiful. It was easy to live in. Now it's very hard to live here. Like fishing and trapping, everything wildlife was very great. Lots of it, and we had good gardens. We never suffered for starving. We always had a good gardens and meat. And everybody had a little bit of cattle in our lifetime. And since new progress coming in, we're going down slowly. Everything is deleted now in our country. We're getting hard to live in this country. Maybe new technology is getting us, but it's killing us in the same time. My own views is the people are moving too fast, and they're supposed to be educated, but it's still they're owning the country. There was mostly trapping and fishing when I was a young person in here, and there weren't that many great people. Many people, actually. Maybe that's the reason why everything was so plentiful. But most of the time, a lot of people started working out. Like myself, I pulled out in here when I was 15-year-old. I started work out all over the country and logging and trapping all over, fishing in the north and mining. And I was underground work for a few years, and I was with geology for a few years, a little bit of everything like that. But mostly of the time, I raised my family here. I raised a big family, which I didn't starve anyone. I had quite a time, mind you, but I didn't starve nobody as yet. And always tell the old people in here, the old pioneers, it's my belief. I believe these old timers, real pioneers, that's the one that made this people things go in this northern areas, because there are a bunch of people that had a great potential of work. They administered lots of things, and they never went to school, but you could put them any place. In the workforce, they were right there, like building roads and everything. They never used compass these people are going north and making these new roads in the bush in there. And there's quite a few people that I know. It doesn't matter what kind of weather, they always took shortcuts across country and never got lost in the bush. That's how smart he was. The last York boatman that died a couple of years ago, Mr. Joe Moran, was the last person that worked in York boat, and he died 2 years ago. But they used to work from here to right to Brushing, right to Sturgeon Weir and Sturgeon Landing, all over that area. And they say they didn't take men if you couldn't carry 200 pounds in your bag, they didn't hire you. So that's how tough they were them years, I guess. Well, after I went to pension, I had nothing to do, and I was too old for anything else and to get a job, so I had these couple of cabins out in the Mule Lake, and I thought to myself, the wild rice was coming very good in the La Ranch area, and I used to attend meetings in there. So I decided to do some wild rice. That's all I had to do, nothing else to do, you know. So that's how I made myself workable. And I was my own boss, so that I could do anything I liked. Nobody told me what to do. That's how I got into wild rice. And I made a good living out of it, actually. If you didn't make that million, you're not going to make it, so you might as well try to make the best way to make a living. Get a good garden going so you can eat.
I'm Ovide Chaboyer, Cumberland House. I've been a little bit of everything in my life. I went to school here in the early years when we had just the one school, and the people that used to move out trapping and fishing, and the ones that stayed around the settlement. But when everybody was in school, there used to be 60 to 70 of us in a small classroom. And we only had the one teacher. But then she had some students that were in grade 6, 7, and 8, and she used to let them teach us young children the ABCs in 1, 2, 3. Eh? And it wasn't too bad, but it was hard. Because when I first started school, I couldn't talk English. I was called a pea soup because my parents were French, they spoke. Dad was a Métis, mother was pure French, and that's all we spoke at home. And got many a black eye or a bloody nose when I started to play with the boys because I didn't understand what they were saying. But eventually I got to learn the language a little bit and learned English. And not too perfect on it because all I made when I went to school was grade 6. Because them days we had to help our parents working in the garden, working in the fields. Eh? And as soon as we were big enough, we all done a little bit of something. My dad was not a big farmer, but he raised cattle and horses and a few pigs and some chickens. So that kept us busy during after school hours. And then when we started to grow up, we had to work a little more. It was wonderful. And they always made sure that we done a little bit of our homework every day from school too, which lots of children today don't do. And I've always said this to them because I'm sorry I didn't go any higher in my classes. Because today now, the way things are going, the world is changing so fast. I've noticed that from the time I started working out. When I started working out, I started harvesting out in the west. Them days they only had the old thrashing machines, and they had horses cutting the grain, and they had what they call the stookers. That's us guys putting the grains together, to dry. And then after that, well, when it was dry enough, the thrashing machines came in, and that's where they thrashed the wheat then. They were driving, sometimes there were 6 team of horses to keep the machine going. And there was always one man out in the field pitching to help the other guy come in. That time I started to work at 50 cents a day. That's years back. That's when 50 cents was 50 cents too. Because and then from there I moved up north. I worked up north with lots of the boys at my age at that time. And them times they used to freight with canoes from Beaver Lake into Lac de Brochet. But we didn't go up as far as Lac de Brochet. We used to stop at South End because they had a big warehouse there, and they had some kind of a York boat there, and they used to freight that from there in. So we got a good neck and good strong legs because we had to portage on every portage where it was bad. So, well, we were all young people and we were crazy like everybody else is today. And we didn't listen to the old timers when they tell us, go to bed, you got a hard day tomorrow. So some of us would sneak away and go to the party or something, like dancing. And them days, there was no booze around, but there was lots of dancing when you got a community. But we all had to be home. So in the morning when the boss is called, if you didn't rule out the first time, the second time they come around, bedroll and all, you were thrown right in the lake. So we learned to wake up a little early. We didn't wait for the second call when that happened a few times. Outside of that, it was good. And then the contractor, he didn't follow us, but he had his men out in the boats. So we were all green guys on portaging and pulling up the rapids and all that. So they put one of the elders with one of the young guys. As soon as we had lunch, the old timer says, no, he says, let them learn the hard way. So they put 2 of us greenhorns together. And here we were trying to pull up the rapids, and they were there want to harm me because they knew that sometimes we'd jump off right in the rapids to hold our boat from going down. But we managed, we survived. We got to be just as good as they were after a while. Maybe had they not done that, we might have never learned it. And the next thing, well, what I've seen, the wages started to come up. We got $1.50 a day working, but that was for 10-hour days. And you didn't have a coffee break at 10 o'clock neither. And when you smoke, you didn't stop to smoke. You had to smoke while you were working. Today, now, we're getting everybody spoiled. Coffee break, 10 o'clock in the morning. You go to work at 8, coffee break. And Lord knows how long we take time for coffee. And then it's snow. So none of the people today work half as hard as the older generation did. Which is good. But still we should have, our culture should be still brought back to the younger generation. As far as trapping and fishing, well, there's lots of these young people that wouldn't know how to trap a beaver or how to dress them and everything because they don't learn that in the young age. They got to learn that as they grow older. And the trouble is in our community today, I remember the days when trapping, little fellows that back that follow their dad, and they had their own little trap line to follow, and their dad would show them how. Today now we stay in school, we don't follow these old trappers. The simple reason why, we haven't got the fur. That's all depleting, the price of fur is going right down to nothing. So naturally, you can't blame the young people for not going there, because today it costs you more just to go to your trapland because you got to pay for your gas, and you don't use dogs no more. You got to have a skidoo. So all that adds up, and there's not enough further to pay for your expenses. So you can't blame the young people, because there's lots of the elders today, they just do that mostly for a pastime, Just try and see if they can survive, and they try to learn the younger people that want to do it, how to do these things. We're living in a world where things are changing so fast that I don't know what it's going to be like in a few years' time. What are the young people going to do today? In my time, I used to leave home and go out. So naturally, I'd find a job if I wanted to work. There was lots of work all over, different things, even if it was digging ditches. Today now, you don't need no diggers because you got that scoop to handle all that. So that puts away all the employment there. See? One man will do at least what 50 could do with a shovel, with just handling that big scoop in an hour's time. So then naturally, where's the jobs coming? Computers are coming out. You sit down here and you press a button and you don't have to be on a job. I got a niece working in BC in the lumber company there. She's sitting in an office like this with the TV and everything there, the whole equipment, the timber mill is there, Something goes wrong, she got to do is press buttons. In them days you couldn't do. In my days you didn't do that. You had to be there, handling everything else. Switching logs onto their carriage. There's a machine there, just puts them on, that's it, see. Sometimes it took 2 men to do that if there was good timber. So there again, the jobs are going. What is it going to be in the future? Say, every 5 years, since I've been noticing and watching these things, I found that it's changed that much that it's hard to keep up. Unemployment in our country is so high today. What's happening? Some people with education, they can't even get that job because they'll be told, you're too educated for this job. See? That hurts. What's our young people going to think of when they go out looking for work? They study for the certain thing and, well, that job is not open, so they're willing to take another one, but that's what they said. You're too qualified for this. And what is it going to be in the future? I've always, and I keep on telling the young children, never mind what goes on, get your 12th grade, and still I says, if you got your 12, go for more because you're not going to survive on 12. You people remember this yourself, you come from the mining town. I remember when I was in Thompson, I only had a grade 6. I worked pretty for the best of them there. Today now, if I went and look for a job, say if I only got grade 6, you can't come and work. You've got to have that certificate that you got at 12th grade.
As far as I remember, I wasn't born exactly in Cumberland, but I was born up west here around Prince Albert district. And my dad left Prince Albert to move down to Cumberland. But I don't exactly remember the year we got to Cumberland. But anyway, I started to remember after I got a little bigger that my dad moved us to Cumberland. So this is how I came to be raised in Cumberland. And, my dad done a lot of trapping and fishing and hunting. This is how my dad made his living in Cumberland. And then when I was getting old enough, I started trapping with my dad. And I was quite young those days. I remember I must have been around 10 or 11 years old when I used to go with my dad trapping. So this is all I'd done pretty well all through my life when I grew up in Cumberland here. course, I'd done an odd job, but if there was any jobs available in those days, there wasn't too many jobs. The only job we had was fighting fire. And fighting fire wasn't much to depend on. So when the depression hit, that's when we had a lot of fires in Cumberland. And then there was a lot of firefighting, and that's how we made our living. And of course, trapping at the fishing at the same time in the summer, and trapping in the winter and hunting at the same time. So this is pretty well how we made our living when I grew up. I think we pretty well went after everything that a trapper could make a little money on. Anything from weasel, muskrat, otter, mink, beaver, link, foxes, coyotes, and of course timber wolves. So this is mostly the type of animals we trapped here. Because some animals we haven't got here, like some fur-bearing animals like the wolverine, we don't have them up here. But outside of that, we pretty well, that's just about what we trapped. Well, that's our main transportation long ago, is dog teams. Because mostly all the trappers, in fact every trapper I suppose, had dogs over this, you know, and that was only the means of your transportation, and you use your dogs when you're trapping. Yeah, when you're moving out to the camp, well, dog was your main transportation, because we depended on dogs a lot. And we always had dogs, I know. My dad always had dogs. When my dad died, I kept on going, just using dogs. So that was our main transportation long ago. But in those days you could depend on dogs. Wherever you go, they were slow, but you could depend on them. They didn't break down or nothing. So, and of course you had to have their food all the time, fish or anything you get a hold of. And that's how we used our dogs. And from there then, after I quit using dogs, then I went on to the skidoo. But I didn't use the skidoo very long. I only used the skidoo about 3 or 4 years, because I was getting old already when the skidoos came out. Most of the fishing was done. Most of the fishing I done was sturgeon fishing. I done very little commercial fishing. That's like fishing walleyes and stuff like that, gold eyes or anything. I fished here and there, but not as much as sturgeon, because that was our main livelihood, is fishing and trapping. Because as soon as the ice breaks up in the spring, as soon as the ice gets clear out of the lakes and the rivers, that's where we fish sturgeon. And we started early in June, and we were out in the fish camp all summer, right up to September the 15th. So this is how we spend our summers. And then after the sturgeon season closes, and then back to the trap line again. That's in October. I don't exactly remember, but I know one time I know, yeah, when I started trapping, because skunks were good price over there, you know, and everybody went out for skunks. And I believe they were $2.50 for a skunk. And my dad came in, he went and lifted his traps, and he said, I found a skunk on the way. He says, go and set your traps. So anyway, I went over there, I was glad, you know, and I found that skunk where he was hibernating. So I set a trap. Next morning I went back, I got the skunk, all right. But, you know, I didn't know in a bit. I just sat down and took a club in, I clubbed him in the head, and then, you know, he shot me with his center, right in my eyes. And I sat there about half an hour, I couldn't see nothing, I was blinded. So, anyway, I tied him around the neck and I dragged it home. And I threw it on top of the cabin with quite a long stick. And about half an hour or an hour after, the dog started barking, and my mother went out. Oh, Sonny, says, your skunk is walking around on top of the cabin. It came to life, because I guess I didn't know it. I was trapping with my dad, and it was in the spring of the year. The rats were just coming out of their hole, you know, it was warm, you know. And the lake was, that little lake was about maybe 2 feet deep. But there was still ice under. And we started setting traps. You could see the rats sitting all over, you know, they're coming out. So I went one way and my dad went the other way. So next morning we went back to see our traps. And of course we used to pack our packs over there. That's how you had to pack everything. But I guess it pretty happened the same thing again, you know, that I caught a few rats and I guess I didn't actually kill this one right off. It kind of came to life. And all of a sudden, you know, he jumped out of my bag and he ran over my head and he jumped in the water, so I lost it. I quite remember that. My dad was standing over there laughing from there, you know. Oh, I said, always knock them in the head good. He said, make sure they're dead.
That's all the time we have for today. I want to thank my 3 guests from Cumberland House, Ovide Chaboyer, Charles Fosseneuve, and Lawrence Cook. And I want to thank you also for watching our program. My name is Ben Marasti, and we'll see you again. Egwese.